Which cars can you negotiate a great deal on right now? How do you negotiate a deal, and when is even the best time to be shopping for a car? That's what we're going to find out. Welcome to Car Help Corner, where we help you, the consumer, master the process of car buying and car ownership. For this video, I'm going to share which new vehicles are starting to pile on dealer lots, which may signal the return of discounts, incentives, and dare I say, actual deals. I'm also going to share which new vehicles you are not going to be getting a great deal on anytime soon, some useful car buying tips, and when is the best time to be shopping for a car. But before we get into it, remember, if you enjoy and get value out of this video, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notifications. And a huge thanks to OMVIC, Ontario's vehicle sales regulator, for sponsoring a portion of this video. So before we get into some of the amazing deals that are out there, how exactly is it that dealers are starting to see cars pile up on their lots when there's been such a severe shortage for such a long time? As many of us now know, there's been a very severe shortage of cars over the past couple of years, which was caused by supply chain issues and a global shortage of computer microchips, which was limiting car manufacturing. But the severe shortage of cars, along with extremely long waiting periods on certain models, was also accompanied by inflation across the market, which caused the prices of new vehicles to go way up. Manufacturers were increasing the MSRP in 2023 by a significant amount. And not only were prices going up, but interest rates for financing and leasing were going way up as well. And all of that combined with a lack of discounts and incentives, as well as some dealerships that have been charging markups and add-ons, increasing the prices of cars even further, has now reached the point where a lot of consumers just can't afford it. And the result is that the inventory for certain new models is starting to build up on dealer lots, and we've even seen the return of incentives and rebates for certain models, which is something that was completely unimaginable a little while ago. The first example of this can be seen with Jeep, which at the time of this recording was offering all kinds of incentives across their lineup. Some of these incentives include 0% interest financing for up to 60 months on the Grand Cherokee, as well as a $1,500 rebate combined with 2.99% financing on the Gladiator, which is quite attractive. And depending on your location, you might even find incentives with up to 10% off the MSRP, which was completely unheard of almost a year ago. The same is also true over at Ram, which at the time of this recording was offering a 10% off MSRP incentive on the Ram 1500, as well as a 2.99% financing rate for up to 36 months. So if you want to get a really good deal on a truck that's available right away, clearly Ram wants to get your attention. But Ram is not the only truck brand that's starting to see the return of incentives thanks to inventory piling up on dealer lots. We're also starting to see this happen with Ford and the F-150, which is their best-selling model. Compared to almost a year ago where it was almost unheard of to get a deal on an F-150, now Ford is offering a 2.99% financing rate for up to 72 months, which is not too bad. And that's also the case over at GM with the Silverado and Sierra, where you can get a 1.99% financing rate for up to 72 months. Again, not a bad financing deal. Now clearly there is a bit of a pattern here. The reason why these particular brands are starting to offer a lot of incentives with dealer inventory piling up is because a lot of these particular vehicles are not exactly the most attractive to buy for a lot of consumers, and they're also really not that affordable either. A few years ago, it was normal to pay between 40 to 50 grand for a truck. Now the average price of a truck has skyrocketed to between 60 to 70 grand. So it's not surprising to see that a lot of consumers are starting to turn away. But thankfully, it's not only trucks that are starting to see some price correction. We're also starting to see this happen with certain electric vehicles too, especially Tesla. For example, at the time of this recording, Tesla was offering a rather attractive lease deal on the Model 3 in the US, with $399 per month with rather reasonable terms, which is not a bad deal if you really want to get into a lease. And if you'd rather do a cash deal and want an SUV, the Model Y is starting to look a lot more attractive thanks to rebates and price reductions over the past year. For example, in certain parts of the US, once you add in all the rebates, it's possible to get into a standard range Model Y for just under 40 grand, which is not a bad deal. Think about that for a moment. 40 grand is more or less what you need to pay for a fully loaded mainstream SUV, like for example a Honda CR-V. So the fact that you can now get into a Model Y, which has much better performance, better technology, and of course is a fully electric vehicle for roughly the same price, is pretty attractive. That's also the case in Canada, where you can get into a single motor Model Y for around $67,000 with the federal rebate, or around $50,000 with provincial rebates in BC and Quebec. Now I have to admit, like a lot of consumers, I do have my own quality and reliability concerns with Tesla, but I have to admit, at that price you are going to be really hard pressed to find any other comparable electric SUV, especially one you can get with a very short waiting period, like you can with a Tesla. Now, just because deals are starting to return for certain types of vehicles doesn't mean now is the time to jump into the market for every type of car. There are unfortunately a lot of vehicles that still have extremely long waiting periods, and you're going to have very little luck negotiating a really good deal on. A great example of this can be seen with hybrids and plug-in hybrids, which remain some of the most difficult types of vehicles to buy. For example, across Canada, most hybrids and plug-in hybrids have extremely long waiting periods at dealerships, anywhere from several months to over a year long depending on the model. Now in the US, thanks to better availability, you're not going to have to wait nearly as long if you really want to get a hybrid or a plug-in hybrid. But trying to get a reasonable deal is still going to be extremely difficult, and you might be faced with a lot of dealerships that are still attempting to charge a substantial markup or a market adjustment fee. And not only is it going to be challenging to get one of these cars for MSRP with no markups, no unnecessary fees, and no add-ons or accessories, but negotiating a deal with a discount is going to be next to impossible. Now thankfully, other categories of new vehicles are not quite as bad as hybrids and plug-in hybrids, but when it comes to a lot of affordable vehicles, especially compact cars and compact SUVs, you are still going to be faced with a lot of the same challenges in most areas. So what should you be doing if you really want to buy a car at the moment? Well, it depends on what type of car you want to buy. For example, if you're in the market for a truck, now is the time that you might be able to negotiate a really good deal. Not only is the inventory for a lot of trucks and even some big SUVs improving a lot, but we're starting to see the return of rebates and incentives, which means that you might even be able to negotiate a lot of money off the MSRP. Now keep in mind, if you want to buy a vehicle that has an extremely long waiting period with very limited availability, it might not be possible to do some of these things. As mentioned, a lot of the more affordable new vehicles and a lot of hybrids and plug-in hybrid vehicles are not going to have a lot of manufacturer incentives, if any at all, and negotiating a discount off the MSRP is not going to be a realistic option either. So as long as you can get one of these vehicles for a fair price, only paying the MSRP, with no add-ons, no unnecessary fees, and especially no markups or market adjustment fees, at least then you know you're going to be getting a reasonable deal. And speaking of negotiating a fair deal, OMVIC, Ontario's vehicle sales regulator, wants you to understand your rights when shopping for a vehicle. For example, if you're planning on financing a vehicle, it might be a good idea to contact your financial institution before going to the dealership to find out what your credit score is and to understand all of your available financing options based on your score. Once you have a pre-approval in place, then you can deal with the dealership, but make it very clear to the dealer that you do not want your credit checked by multiple lenders, as this can potentially hurt your credit score. Just to be safe, make sure you know exactly who the dealership is sharing your credit application with, and make sure you receive a copy of all the different offered terms and rates from each lender so you know exactly what all your options are. You also want to make sure that you read the contract or the purchase agreement extremely carefully before you sign. Make sure all of the agreed terms and conditions are in the contract, that you're happy with the price, happy with the financing offer, and if the dealership makes any kinds of promises to you, make sure that all those promises are in writing on the contract as well. Keep in mind that in Ontario, there is no cooling off period, so once you sign that contract, the deal is final. So make sure you're happy with everything and that you've read it extremely carefully before you sign. To learn more about your car buying rights, or to learn more about OMVIC, you can find more information in the description box below. Now at this point, some of you might be wondering, given that there are not a lot of incentives and rebates on certain types of vehicles, whether it might make more sense to consider buying a lightly used vehicle, something that's 2 to 3 years old, instead of buying something brand new. And the simple answer to that is most likely not. The issue is that we are still dealing with a very severe shortage of vehicles, especially used vehicles. So in most cases, a lot of used vehicles are not going to have a lot of meaningful savings when compared to the equivalent brand new one. And if after you've done your research and realized that buying a used car is not going to save you a lot of money, if any money when compared to the equivalent new car, then there's no question, buying a brand new car is the way to go. Not only are you going to have a car that has a lot more value down the road, but you're also going to have the protection of a full warranty, something that you don't get with a lot of used cars. And of course, you're also going to have a car that has no wear and tear, which means you're not going to have to spend any money on repairs. But whichever way you look at it, there's no question, buying a new vehicle is going to cost a ton of money, and it costs way more now than ever before. Payments are at an all-time high, and chances are we're not going to see these things change anytime soon. Manufacturers are constantly increasing their prices year over year. Interest rates for financing are extremely high. And of course, even though we're not seeing quite the same level of markups and market adjustment fees that we saw in the past, discounts and rebates are still next to non-existent. So what this all means is that there is no harm in waiting if you're not in a hurry to buy a vehicle at the moment. You can only benefit from waiting because as time goes on, chances are interest rates will eventually start to come down, and we might finally see the return of more rebates and more discounts compared to what we have now. So whatever you do, don't rush into buying a car at the moment. And if you can wait until next year or even later, chances are it's only going to benefit you. So let me know what you thought of this video, and if you have any suggestions for any future car videos, just leave a comment below. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe. You can also take a look at my other car videos by clicking these links over here. Make sure to follow me on TikTok and Instagram. And if you need additional car buying advice, recommendations, or help with getting a great deal on your next new car purchase, make sure to check out carhelpcan.com. Thanks so much for watching, and see you next time.